Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2017 BMW X5. Now this is what the hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and the great part about it is it's going to stay looking pretty nice because it's a hidden cross tube, and even the receiver is pretty tucked back, so you get a nice clean look and still the utility of the 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. And that's going to be a great option for a hitch because most of your accessories do come in that 2" configuration, so this is really going to open it up for ball mounts, bike racks, cargo carriers, or whatever you might throw on your vehicle throughout the lifespan of the hitch. Now when you put those accessories in place, you're going to need a 5/8 pin and clip. Now this is going to not come with the hitch, but a lot of your accessories will have them included, so it's something to look for when choosing those accessories. And if you want to pick up a locking version where you can actually put this in place, lock it, and know that your accessories will stay on the vehicle, you can pick one of those up here at eTrailer. You have a rolled style safety chain loop here, so if you are planning on towing, it's going to be nice and easy to hook up. It's plenty big enough too for a larger clevis style hook. Now if you do plan on towing, this actually has pretty good weight capacities. The gross trailer weight rating is coming in at 6,000 pounds, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded up. Now that also has a tongue weight rating of 600 pounds, so that's pretty good. That's going to be the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening, so your bike racks or cargo carriers or anything that's really suspended, and I don't really worry too much that you're going to overdo that weight. Now this can be used with weight distribution, but the numbers do stay the same. And before hooking up and trying to tow that 6,000 pounds, you're going to want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's rated at and compare that with the hitch rating and take the lower of the two numbers. That way you stay safe. Now when choosing accessories, it's nice to know where you might need to actually get one as far as length, and we're measuring from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the rear fascia, and that's going to be 3 inches. So when choosing that ball mount or any of your accessories, you can actually determine how far out it's going to be. And also some of your folding accessories, you want to make sure that it's not going to make contact with the rear of the fascia, but this one is pretty far out, so you should be pretty good as far as options out there. Now as far as ground clearance, you're looking at about 14 inches, so that's pretty good, and I don't worry about this making contact with the ground, but when you do have your accessories loaded up, especially your suspended ones, as you go on an incline, those can actually dip down, so just something to keep in mind when you have those loaded up and you're driving on inclines or any rough or rocky terrain. Now as far as install goes, BMWs by nature are a little bit trickier than other vehicles, and it's going to require the whole rear fascia to come off, and it can get a little bit tricky on some of the clips to get that fascia off. But I'm going to walk you through all of it to make sure that you get yours installed. So let's take a look at the installation and we'll get yours figured out. Now, in order for our hitch to go in place, we are going to need to remove the rear fascia, and to begin the steps to remove it, we're going to be taking off these 2 plastic rivets. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can simply pry on them. It's going to take a little bit of force to get these, so having a trim panel tool is really handy. The other way is to drill out the center, so whichever works best for you. If you are drilling, just go in that center portion and you should be able to pry that out. I'm going to go ahead with my trim panel tool and see if we can't get this one out. We're going to need to get kind of underneath it, so it can be a little bit tricky here. You might need to get a pick or something with a sharp point to really get under there. But if we can get just a little bit of gap here, we can get underneath it and pry it out. Now these will not be going back in, so if you do manual them in the process or break them as I just did, not to worry, it does come with new rivets. So with these 2 rivets out, we're going to need to pull this out. Now you're going to want to be careful because if you pull too hard on this plastic, it is going to leave a seam, and unfortunately that's going to be permanent. So just take your time here. You don't want to pull too hard. And the best trick I've found is using a plastic trim tool like this. There's going to be a clip that you're going to want to put pressure on, and that's going to help separate it. Now if you don't have something like this, you could probably get away using a credit card or something along those lines that would be strong enough. But you're going to be pushing in, finding that clip, and it's got a little tab, so if you kind of separate it, you can almost see it. And then we'll just put pressure on the back side here, and this should pop out. And just be careful too on your paint. The plastic trim tools are really nice for this because you don't have to worry too much about it scuffing the paint. But if you need to put a little extra protection, you can go ahead and put some painter's tape on this edge. But once we get this tab kind of pushed down and out of the way, we should be able to get this to pop out. There we go. Now we're going to pop this out, and we're going to need to just be very gentle here as to not pull this out too far. Now again, you don't want to pull too hard here. There's still a rivet that we're not removing. So I think a 1/4 inch socket is going to be your best bet to not stress this too much. If you have a ratcheting 8mm, that'll work as well. But again, just be careful. You don't want to cause a crease here on the plastic. And then once we get this out, we're going to want to keep these in a safe spot, as well as all of the hardware that we're removing. It's just going to make reinstallation a lot easier. So once we get this out, we'll go ahead and go to the other side and repeat the same process. Next, we're going to need to remove our rear reflectors. Now, these are notoriously brittle and kind of a tricky step, but the best way to do this without potentially breaking them is going to be to go to the back side, and you're going to find that there's some clips. So you're going to want to press those clips in, as well as just kind of push on the reflector to try to get this to separate without breaking. So from the back side here, you can see this tab here. You're going to want to pinch that and push this forward. And as we move along on the reflector, there's going to be another tab that's in here, and it hooks on to the outside portion. So we're going to want to start with this clip and push that way, and then work our way to the outside. So I'm pushing the metal tab in, and then I can kind of work my way through here. I'm going to work on the next clip. Again, just take your time here because these will break pretty easily. So I'm just pushing that up, and then this will slide out. So you can see what it looks like. I just push this in and then push this tab up, and that's where it hooks in. So really just following that same method should get these out without breaking. And that's going to expose this 8mm, which we'll be removing. But I'm going to go ahead and get my other reflector off, and then we can take this off. We'll go ahead and get this 8mm removed. And we'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. So now we'll head under to the rear fascia, and you're going to see an 8mm that's up here by the wheel, as well as two here, and then it's going to be mirrored on the other side. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. So now we need to actually remove our rear tail lights, and that's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to pull this access panel out, and then we're going to see that we have two 8mm nuts here, as well as the plug for our light. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug our light. There's just a tab that you're going to push in, and that separates that. And then we'll go ahead and get these loosened up and taken out. Now do be careful, you don't want to drop these, so just be careful, because if they go in, they're going to be hard to find. Now to get your taillight separated, sometimes it can be a little tricky just because, you know, dirt and grime kind of builds up and it wants to seal up. So I just used a rubber mallet and lightly tapped on those studs of where we pulled those 8mm off, and that should allow us to get our taillight out. So we'll just set this aside. So that's going to expose this 8mm, so we'll take this off, and then we're just going to repeat on the other side. Now, before pulling off the rear fascia, for a preventative measure, I just went ahead and put some painter's tape along our seams, as well as on this wheel well liner here. And that way, when we not only take this off, but put it back on, as this is going to inevitably kind of rub against each other, you don't want that to scratch your paint. So this is just a nice, easy way to kind of safeguard that from happening. So go ahead and get some painter's tape on both sides of the vehicle. So now we're going to start to remove our rear fascia, and we're going to just work our way from the outside towards these clips. And these clips will need to be kind of worked at with a plastic trim tool. You want to just be careful here, kind of work yourself slow here so you don't damage any of them. But I've kind of pulled back our wheel well liner, or the fender liner here, and I'm just going to kind of work my way down slowly. You can hear that popping. So once we get to this portion though, you'll see these clips kind of have tabs that are stuck in there, so you're going to want to kind of pry these to where these are able to pop out. So again, just take your time here. You can see the little snap that's kind of through this hole. So if you use a flat head or something along those lines, you should be able to pry that down and then get this to separate. And then just kind of keeping pressure, we'll continue to work our way. And then I'm going to go on the other side and do the same thing till we kind of make our way to the middle. So now you're going to want to grab an extra set of hands because it's going to be a little bit cumbersome. You also want to set up a place to put the bumper once you have that off. Now there are some clips on the center, and holding the little tailgate here kind of at a 45, you can see there's these tabs that we're going to have to kind of raise this up over, but they're also kind of locked into that portion. So just kind of be careful here. But if you can kind of wedge underneath, those tabs will kind of unlock there. And then as we put pressure, we should be able to kind of work our way down and get those separated. So let's go ahead and get this fascia removed. Now there's clips along here as well as these ones. So I popped those out, and just with a little bit of force, you're kind of able to get this to separate. But again, just take your time here. There also could be some electrical connections, so don't pull the bumper completely away because we may need to separate those. So as we pull this back, we can see where our electrical connection is. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this separated here. There's a clip that we can just push in this tab, and this should separate it, allowing our bumper to come off. Now, if your plug has some buildup on here, it may be a little bit tricky, but you can see there's going to be this locking portion that feeds in this. So pushing on these tabs is what's going to separate it. And you may need to take a small flathead and just kind of pry that to get that loose. But once we have that plug undone, we can go ahead and set our rear fascia aside. Now, using the box with the hitch came in is going to be a good option. You just want to make sure that this doesn't fall down and get scuffed while just having it off of the vehicle. So now we're going to go ahead and get our bumper beam removed, and there's going to be a total of 4 nuts that we'll be pulling off. Now, to gain access to the top ones, you're going to want to have your tailgate at a 45, and that should give you a nice clear shot. So we'll go ahead and get these removed. So with those 4 off, we're going to go ahead and remove the 4 on the other side as well. So now we can go ahead and get our bumper beam, take that off, and we're not going to be replacing this, so you can set it aside if you want to keep it for later, or you can get rid of it, but it will not be staying on the vehicle. Now, if these came off with the bumper beam, you're going to want to put these back on. These are going to keep water from getting inside the frame, so just make sure that those are in place. And now you can go ahead and take your hitch and get this aligned on the studs. And then once you have that in place, we're going to go ahead and take our conical tooth washer, which you can see has a conical shape here, and it's got teeth. The teeth are going to go against the hitch, so go ahead, get that on there, and then you can follow it up with the supplied nuts. And we're just going to go ahead and get these all hand tightened on. So now with a 3/4 inch socket, we're going to go ahead and get these snug. You don't have to crank it down too hard or use an impact, because we're going to go back with the torque wrench to get the proper torque setting. So get these all snug, and then when you're ready, you're going to want to go ahead and use that same 3/4 inch socket and a torque wrench. And the torque setting you're going to find in the instruction manual. So we're going to go ahead and just get these all torqued to spec. And this is going to be important. Make sure that it's not too tight, putting stress on the threads, but also that it's not going to become loose over time. Now, if you need a torque wrench, we have these available here at eTrailer. You can generally rent them at an auto parts store, but this is going to be an important step, again, just to make sure that they're properly seated. So now we'll just repeat on the remaining hardware. So now at this point, our hitch is installed. So we just need to get everything put back on, and there might be a little bit of trimming required on the fascia. I'm going to kind of get ours test fitted on, and if I do need to trim it, I can go ahead and do that. But we want to make sure that we have our electrical connector put back in. We'll get our taillights back in, and then I'll show you how to get the rivets put back on the wheel well liners. And don't forget to get all the screws put back, including the ones underneath the taillight, as well as the ones that were behind the reflector. Now, you also want to make sure that you have your 8mm put back in. You can pop all this back in, and then to get our rivets in place, you can see the ones that are included. Pretty easy. Just place these through, and you don't actually have to use a Phillips head. You can kind of just push these in, and it's a little tight here, so might need to get one, but I was able to just push that in, and that's going to hold this in place. Now, depending on your trim package, you may or may not have to trim your fascia. Ours actually fit. It is pretty tight here, but it's not pushing the bumper out, and everything was able to go on with no problem. So if you do need to trim yours, the measurements are in the instruction manual, so refer to those. Now, with everything back in place, all that's left to do is start using our hitch. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2017 BMW X5.